I was standing at my mother's grave, and yet, the person sobbing the loudest wasn't me. It was my sister. She clutched a faded photo to her chest, a picture of her holding a newborn in a hospital bed. That newborn was me, but something felt off. Growing up, I never remembered anything before the age of 6. No baby photos with mom, no bedtime stories. Only Julia, my much older sister, who treated me more like a daughter than a sibling. And then, I found the letter, hidden behind an old dresser, buried under dust and time. It was written on my birthday, addressed to my baby girl, and signed by Julia. What kind of sister writes that? What kind of mother hides the truth for a lifetime? The lies in my family ran deeper than I ever imagined. And the truth? It shattered everything I believed about who I was and who I belonged to. Before we continue, if life's hidden corners and family secrets move you, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You might not have time now, but you want to come back for more stories that stay with you long after they end. Now ask yourself this: what would you do if the sister you love turned out to be your mother? Because that's exactly what happened to me. I always thought it was normal not remembering anything before the age of 6. No first steps, no lullabies, just a void, like someone had hit delete on the first chapter of my life, but everyone around me acted like that was perfectly fine. My mother Margaret brushed it off with a warm smile and a vague "you were just a quiet baby." And Julia, my older sister, 15 years my senior, always seemed to change the subject. Every single time. Julia was more than just a sister. She brushed my hair before school. She made me soup when I was sick. She even came to parent-teacher conferences when mom was too tired. I remember one night, I was maybe 7, I had a terrible fever. I kept calling out for mom, but it was Julia who came rushing in, cool cloth in hand, whispering, "It's okay, baby. I've got you." That "baby" always struck me as strange. Sisters don't call their siblings baby, do they? And then there were the photos. Every time I flipped through the family albums, something felt off. There were birthday cakes, Christmas mornings, summer picnics. But in every baby photo of me, it was Julia holding me, feeding me, changing me. There wasn't a single photo of Margaret cradling me as a newborn. When I asked about it once, mom laughed it off. "Oh honey, I was always the one behind the camera." I believed her, because that's what kids do. We believe the people who raise us. But the older I got, the more things didn't add up, like how Julia never dated, never moved out. She once turned down a full scholarship just to stay close to home. I'd overheard her telling a friend on the phone, "I can't leave Lena. She needs me more than anyone realizes." At the time, I thought, wow, I must be a really needy kid. Now, I think she meant something else entirely. One afternoon, I was cleaning out our old garage. Mom had passed away a week earlier, and grief made me restless. I was pulling down boxes of old books when I found an album I'd never seen before. The cover was dusty, floral, and tucked in between 2 crates of Christmas lights. Inside, more photos. But these weren't like the others. They were out of order. Some were even torn at the edges. But one caught my eye and made my stomach tighten. Julia, in a hospital gown, her face pale and exhausted, but smiling. And in her arms, a newborn, wrapped in a blue blanket with the name Lena written in marker on a tiny cap. My heart started racing. Why would Julia be in the hospital holding me, if I was her baby sister? I turned the photo over. In Julia's handwriting, "You were worth it." That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every childhood moment with new eyes. Maybe it was grief messing with me. Or maybe it was the truth finally beginning to knock on the door. To calm myself down, I made chamomile tea around M and opened Julia's old dresser, something I hadn't touched in years. It smelled like her lavender and something oddly sweet, like vanilla mixed with library books. I almost laughed. Julia always sprayed way too much perfume. She said it made her feel grown up. Inside, tucked behind a stack of old scarves, was a folded letter. The paper was yellowing, fragile, almost brittle. The envelope read, "For my baby girl, when the time is right." I stood there frozen, the kettle whistling in the background like some eerie soundtrack. I knew I shouldn't read it. It wasn't addressed to me by name, but my fingers opened it anyway. As I unfolded the paper, a single photograph fell out me as a toddler, asleep on Julia's chest, her eyes closed, her hand over mine, and the letter. Well, let's just say, it didn't begin with "Dear Sister." It began with, "My Sweet Lena, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. I read the first few lines of that letter in the dim glow of the kitchen, the steam from my forgotten tea curling into the air like ghosts. My sweet Lena, you were never supposed to be a secret. You were my beginning, and my greatest heartbreak. My hands shook. I sat down at the table, the old wooden chair creaking beneath me like it was sighing with the weight of the moment. The letter continued, page after page of raw, handwritten truth, Julia's truth. She wrote about being 16, scared, alone, pregnant, with no one but her mother Margaret breathing down her neck, calling it a mistake, a disgrace, an unforgivable sin. Julia begged to keep the baby, but Margaret gave her an ultimatum: give up the baby, or leave this house forever. So Julia ran. She found shelter in the apartment of an old friend from high school, a girl named Molly who worked night shifts at a diner and helped deliver me. In their tiny bathroom. It sounded like something out of a movie, but it was my life. Julia said she looked into my eyes the second I was born and knew she couldn't let me go. But she also knew she couldn't raise me alone. She wrote, I brought you back to my mother, hoping, begging she would help. Instead, she made a new story, that she had adopted a baby girl, that I was just your older sister. Julia signed every page of that letter with the same line, forgive me if you can. I cried. I didn't even realize I was crying until my cheeks were wet and the ink on the last page blurred under my fingers. The sun had started rising, and suddenly, everything looked different. The walls of our house, the family portraits, even the refrigerator. Magnets, they all felt like props on a stage I didn't know I was performing on. Later that morning, I found Julia in the backyard, pruning the roses. She looked tired, older than usual, like she hadn't slept in days, or maybe years. Julia, I said softly. She turned, smiled. I held up the letter. Her face went pale. She dropped the clippers. The silence between us was loud, like a scream, held in a jar. I wasn't supposed to find this, was I? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she sat down on the back porch steps, staring at the ground like it held every memory she was trying to forget. I was going to tell you, she whispered. Someday. When? I asked, trying to keep my voice from shaking. When I was 40, when I had kids of my own, when it was too late to ask why. Then something unexpected happened. She laughed. A small, bitter, broken laugh. Mom used to say I couldn't even keep a goldfish alive, Julia said. She said, you think you can raise a baby? You couldn't even keep a houseplant from dying. I didn't mean to, but I laughed too. Because somehow, even in the middle of this life-shattering moment, Julia had found a way to bring humor to it. That was her way, always was. We sat there together for a long time, not talking, not crying anymore, just sitting. Eventually she looked at me. You're not angry? I shook my head. I don't know what I am. Because I didn't. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt. I was just hollow, like someone had emptied me out and left the shell behind. But even then, somewhere deep beneath the ache, was the smallest seed of something else, something warm, something that whispered, she never left you. Not for a second, and that mattered more than any lie ever could. I hadn't spoken to Aunt Alice in nearly 5 years. She was my mother Margaret's younger sister, the kind of woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and never let you forget she once met Barry Manilow in an elevator. Growing up, she was the fun aunt, the one who brought me coloring books instead of lecture-filled cards on birthdays. But after Grandma died, the family kind of fractured, and Alice became more of a Christmas card type of relative. Still, something told me she might know more than anyone else. I called her that afternoon. She answered on the third ring, her voice exactly as I remembered, sharp, cheerful, and slightly dramatic. Lena? Oh, sweetheart. I heard about your mother. I'm so sorry. I really am. She was complicated. There was a pause. Not long, but just enough to make me wonder if she meant to say something else. I need to ask you something, I said. It's about Julia. About me. Silence. She invited me over the next morning. Said she'd make lemon tea and wear her truth-telling cardigan, the same joke she used when I was little, and asked her why cats don't go to heaven. Her answer back then, only the ones who don't scratch the couch. When I arrived, the house smelled like cinnamon and something old, like forgotten photo albums. Alice sat on the sun porch, wrapped in a cream-colored shawl, a teacup balanced delicately in her hand like a prop in a movie. I sat across from her, letter in hand, heart pounding in my chest like a drum too loud for the room. She stared at the envelope, didn't touch it, didn't ask what was inside, just sipped her tea and said, "You know, don't you?" I nodded. She sighed. The kind of sigh that holds decades, maybe a lifetime. I told Margaret it was a terrible idea, she said, quietly. But your mother, she cared more about how things looked than how they really were. Why didn't you stop her? I asked. Alice chuckled, bitter, tired. Sweetheart, you don't stop Margaret. You survive her. She reached for a tin of cookies and offered me one. I declined. She bit into one herself and said, "Your mother staged the whole thing. She disappeared for nearly a year, told everyone she was traveling for her health, then came back with a baby girl. No questions asked. New town, new church, new truth." And Julia? I asked. She was heartbroken, Alice said. Margaret wouldn't even let her touch you in public at first. Said it would confuse people. But when you cried, it was Julia who picked you up. When you got sick, it was Julia who stayed up all night. That girl, she gave up everything. I swallowed hard. It felt like my whole life was shifting, like someone had tilted the world just a few degrees, and nothing lined up anymore. But why keep it secret forever? I whispered. Alice's eyes softened. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Because by the time she realized she'd made a mistake, it was too late. You were already calling Margaret Mom. You were already asking Julia why she didn't have a boyfriend, and why she cried during lullabies. Then she smiled. A part of her liked the illusion. Made her feel like she'd gotten a second chance at motherhood, even if it wasn't real. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Alice said something I'll never forget. You want to know the strangest part? In her own way, Margaret did love you. She just didn't know how to let go of the lie. I sat there, staring at the rim of my teacup, wondering how many memories were real, and how many had been manufactured for the sake of appearances. Alice, sensing my thoughts, reached into a drawer and pulled out a small photograph. Faded, curled. At the corners. It was me, maybe 2 years old, asleep on Julia's chest, and Margaret, standing behind them, hands folded, smiling. That smile haunted me, because now I knew what was behind it. It took me 2 days to work up the courage to say anything. Julia kept going about her routine, folding laundry, watering the plants, humming that same old tune she used to sing to me when I had nightmares. I watched her more closely now. The way her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. The way she kept glancing at the drawer where the letter had been. Finally, one evening, I walked into her room. She was sitting at her desk, writing bills, the glow of a small lamp casting soft shadows on her face. I stood in the doorway, heart pounding. My voice came out smaller than I expected. "Julia?" She didn't look up. I read the letter. Still nothing. "I know everything." Her pen froze mid-sentence. She closed her eyes, let out the faintest exhale like she'd been holding her breath for 30 years. When she finally turned to face me, her eyes were red-rimmed but dry, tired, like someone who had cried all her tears long ago. "I wanted to tell you," she said softly. "But how do you tell your daughter you're not her sister?" The word daughter cracked through the air like glass. "I'm not mad," I whispered. I don't know who I am anymore." Julia stood slowly, as if her legs might betray her. She crossed the room and gently touched my cheek. "I never stopped being your mother," she said. "Even if I had to pretend to be your sister." There was no dramatic breakdown, no shouting, just silence, heavy, sacred. I fell into her arms like a child, and for the first time in my life, I let her hold me. As her daughter, she stroked my hair and whispered, "You were never a mistake. You were the only thing that ever made sense." After a while I pulled back, wiped my tears with the sleeve of my sweater, and tried to smile. "I thought you didn't date because you were too picky," I said, half laughing. Julia chuckled through her tears. "I was picky," she said. "I needed someone who'd accept I came as a 2-for-1 package." I glanced around the room, the same room where I'd once tried on her lipstick, where she'd sewn my prom dress by hand, where she stayed up all night the week I had the flu. "How did you do it?" I asked. "All these years?" She sat down on the edge of her bed, hands folded. "I kept waiting for the right time. But time isn't kind to secrets. It just makes them heavier." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was a storm of memories being rewritten in real time. Julia's lullabies, her hand on my forehead, the way she always introduced me as her baby sister with a pride too big for that title. And suddenly, it all made sense. Before I drifted off, I recorded a quick voice memo on my phone. Something I never do, just in case I needed to hear the words again later. She's my mother. She always has been. And I think I've always known. If you've been moved by stories like this, stories that linger in the quiet corners of your heart, feel free to subscribe. That way, you can always come back, whether it's to finish what you started or to discover something new, because some stories, they're worth returning to. The question had always been there, buried beneath school plays and birthday candles, beneath bedtime stories and packed lunches. I never asked before, because I didn't know I was supposed to, but now, it hung in the air, between me and Julia, like smoke after a fire. Do you know who my father is? I asked one morning, my voice barely audible over the hum of the dishwasher. Julia didn't answer right away. She was rinsing a coffee cup, but her hands stilled under the faucet. She turned the water off, dried her hands, then sat down at the table like someone preparing for a funeral. I do, she said finally. That was it. No dramatic music. No shocked gasp. Just those two words. I waited. Julia looked down, then up, eyes wet but steady. His name is Daniel Whitmore, she said. He was my high school boyfriend. Older, charming, dangerous in a way I didn't understand at the time. That name meant nothing to me, but the way she said it, like she was afraid the walls might hear. We dated for almost a year, she continued. I thought he was everything, but when I told him I was pregnant, he told me to disappear. I felt my stomach twist. Julia laughed bitterly. Classic, right? He said I'd ruin his life, his career. Said he didn't believe it was his. Even suggested I get rid of you. My fists clenched under the table. I was 17. No money, no future, but I couldn't do it. I loved you before I even saw you. There it was again, that quiet heroism Julia wore so effortlessly. So Margaret stepped in, I said, finishing the thought. Julia nodded. She told me she'd raise you as her own. Said it was the only way to protect both of us. And at the time, I believed her. I sat back, breathless. Daniel Whitmore, a ghost with a name. I spent the next day online, searching. There were dozens of Daniel Whitmores, but only one stood out: a successful attorney living just 2 states away, married, 2 kids, president of the local country club, and in one photo, the same crooked smile I'd seen in the mirror. It felt like looking into a stranger's face and seeing my own reflection. I didn't tell Julia right away. I needed time to process, to breathe. So I did something foolish. I wrote him a letter, just a few lines, no threats, no demands. My name is Lena. I think you might be my father. I don't want anything from you, just the truth. I mailed it the next morning, heart racing the entire way to the mailbox, and then I waited. 1 day, 3, a week, nothing. On the 10th day, a plain white envelope appeared in our mailbox. No return address. I tore it open in the driveway. Inside, one single line: never contact me again. That was it. No denial, no explanation, just rejection, cold and absolute. I stood there, barefoot, mail in hand, as the wind carried the scent of grass and something dying. Julia watched from the porch. She didn't say a word, just opened her arms, and I went to her. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt, but because something inside me had already expected it. That night, we lit a fire in the backyard, burned his letter, watched the ashes float like dead wishes into the sky. As we sat in silence, Julia finally spoke. He doesn't deserve you. He never did, and he never will. I looked over at her. My mother, my protector, my sister in name only. You do, I said, and for the first time since everything came undone, we smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't hide pain, but honors it. It started with a box, a plain, weathered showbox tucked in the back of Julia's closet. I wasn't snooping, honestly. I wasn't. I had just offered to help her sort through old winter clothes, but when I pulled the box down, something about it made me pause. No label, no dust, like it had been touched recently. Julia saw it in my hands and froze. She didn't speak, didn't try to take it back. She just said, "You should read it." Inside was a leather-bound notebook, worn, cracked at the edges, pages swollen from ink and tears. I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. Julia's. The first page was dated just 2 weeks before I was born. I don't know who I am anymore. The words were raw, unfiltered. I thought I could live with the lie, thought I could give her away and still be whole. But every time she kicks, I feel more like a mother and less like a child. I turned the pages slowly, feeling like I was eavesdropping on the Julia I never met, the scared, pregnant, Girl standing at the edge of womanhood. One entry hit me like a punch. I told Margaret the truth today. Not just about Daniel, but about the night everything changed. What truth? My hands trembled as I flipped to the next page, and then I found it. Daniel didn't leave. I told him to. He begged me to keep the baby, said we'd figure it out. But I was afraid. Afraid of being like Mom. Afraid of needing someone too much. So I lied. I told him it wasn't his. Told him I'd already decided. I had to stop reading. The room felt suddenly too small, like the truth was taking up all the air. Julia didn't reject him. She pushed him away, on purpose, and that letter never contact me again. Maybe that wasn't rejection at all. Maybe it was pain. I sat there, stunned. Not angry, not hurt, just undone. That night, I brought the journal to Julia. She was on the porch, rocking slowly, watching fireflies. I sat beside her and opened to that page. I didn't have to say a word. She looked at the entry, then at me. I was scared, she whispered. I was so scared. He loved me, and I didn't know how to believe it. I thought pushing him away was the only way to stay in control. I didn't say anything, just listened. He wrote me letters for months, she said. I never opened them. Margaret burned them all. Why? I asked. She said I made my choice, that I needed to live with it. Silence fell between us, a kind of silence that's not empty but full of the things we never dared to say. Do you regret it? I finally asked. Julia stared ahead. Every day, she said. I nodded, and strangely, that confession, that imperfect, deeply human moment made me love her more. She wasn't a villain. She wasn't a saint. She was just a girl, trying to survive the weight of decisions too big for her age. I reached out and took her hand. I forgive you, I said. Her lips quivered. Then, for the first time since I found the letter, she cried. Not the quiet kind, not the dignified kind, the ugly, body shaking, soul emptying kind. I held her, and in that moment, we weren't mother and daughter. We weren't sister and sister. We were just two women, bound by blood and by the bruises time had left behind. The woman from the cemetery left behind more than a name. She gave me an address, a quiet street on the edge of town, where wildflowers grew through the cracks in the sidewalk. I think he still lives there, she said. I stared at the paper for days, folded it, unfolded it, put it in my coat pocket and then took it out again. Julia didn't ask, but I knew she knew. And maybe she needed me to go. So I did. The house was small, with ivy creeping up the porch railings. An old red truck sat in the driveway, rusting proudly. I knocked twice. When the door opened, I saw him, Daniel, older now, gray at the temples, a soft scar just above his brow. But his eyes, they were mine. He blinked, stunned, then stepped back. I've been waiting for this moment for 30 years, he said. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I just asked, why didn't you come find me? He laughed softly. It wasn't bitter. I did, he said. I came to your school plays, your soccer games. I sat in the back, never close, but I was there. My legs nearly gave out. He reached for a photo on the table behind him, me at 6 years old, covered in glitter and holding a paper star. I knew I couldn't be your father, but I could be your silent cheerleader, your invisible shadow. We talked for hours. About Julia, about the letter, about the night. He almost knocked on our door and turned away. You look so happy, he said. I didn't want to break that. Back home, I told Julia everything. She closed her eyes and nodded. I always wondered, she whispered, if he ever watched from afar. I handed her the photo. She clutched it like a prayer. The next day, they met in our kitchen. No music, no speeches, just two people, broken and braver than they ever thought they could be. I never hated you, Daniel said. I never stopped loving you, Julia replied. The words hung in the air like fragile glass. And then, quietly, they shattered, into laughter, into tears, into something like healing. That evening, we had dinner together for the first time as a family. It was awkward at first. Daniel spilled water. Julia burnt the garlic bread. I dropped my fork twice. And then someone joked about how I never learned to hold a spoon properly. We all laughed. For a moment, we weren't rewriting the past. We were just living the present. After dinner, Julia pulled me aside. There's one more thing, she said. She handed me the last page of her journal. It wasn't dated, just one sentence. When the truth comes, may it be met with love. I held the page for a long time. Read it again and again, because sometimes the truth doesn't destroy everything. Sometimes it sets everything right. I looked at Julia, my mother, and Daniel, my father, both imperfect, both human, and both mine. It didn't happen in a grand moment. No dramatic music, no big speech, no camera ready tears. It happened in the most ordinary way. We were folding laundry. Julia had just dropped a pair of my socks, and I was teasing her about how she still couldn't fold fitted sheets after all these years. She rolled her eyes and laughed, the sound soft and familiar, and then she said it like she'd said it 1,000 times before. Can you hand me that shirt, sweetheart? She didn't even realize what she'd said, but I did, because that word sweetheart, it used to feel too close, too much, too complicated. Now it felt right. I handed her the shirt, and something caught in my throat. Hey, Julia? She looked up. I've been thinking. She waited. I think I want to call you Mom. She froze, like the word hit her harder than any truth ever could. Her hands dropped the shirt. You don't have to, she whispered, blinking fast. I mean, I know I wasn't, I know I didn't. I stopped her with a smile. You were always Mom, even when you didn't know how to be. She covered her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks, quiet and stunned. I never thought I'd get to hear that word from you, she said. You earned it, I replied. Maybe not perfectly, but with love. And that's what matters to me now. We hugged, a real hug. Not the awkward ones from the past. Not the careful, polite kind. The kind that says I forgive you. The kind that says I see you now. Later that week, we took a walk, just the two of us, down the same street where she used to push me in a stroller while pretending she was just my sister. I used to dream of this, she said, watching the sunset. You calling me Mom, us being okay. I smiled. I used to dream of it too. Even when I didn't know it. We passed by a little girl holding her mother's hand. I watched as they giggled together over melted ice cream. There was something healing about the simplicity of it. You think it's too late? I asked Julia. For us to start over? She shook her head. No, not if we start with love. That night, I wrote in my own journal, forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's remembering with less pain. Love isn't just biology. It's who shows up. And she showed up. I choose her. I choose to call her Mom. The next morning, I called Daniel too. Dad, I said. He choked up immediately. We're not perfect. Our story isn't clean, but it's ours. And I wouldn't trade it. The lies hurt. The silence broke me. But the truth brought us home. And if you're watching this, if you've ever felt like your family was too broken to fix, too tangled to untie, please remember this. It's never too late to love again. Never too late to say Mom, or Dad, or I forgive you. Sometimes, the most powerful family isn't the one you're born into, it's the one you choose, again and again. With your whole heart. So if this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you miss, someone you forgave, or someone you still need to forgive, don't wait. Say the word. Say Mom. As someone who's spent years listening to stories of families torn apart and stitched back together, I can tell you this. The most powerful truth is rarely loud. It's often whispered in the quiet moment when someone finally says, I forgive you, or I still choose you. This story wasn't just about a shocking twist that a sister was, in fact, a mother. It was about something deeper, the strength it takes to uncover truth, and the courage it takes to love after betrayal. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? Or found forgiveness where you thought none could exist? Tell us in the comments. Your story could be the light someone else is looking for. And if this video moved you even just a little, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss the stories that make us feel, make us think, and maybe help us heal. We have more powerful stories coming, stories of truth, love, and second chances. Until then, take care of your heart. And if you're lucky enough to still have someone to call Mom, don't wait. Tell her.